Coming up on LevinTV, CNN, the Constitution, and me. And it all starts now.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
Hi, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is LevinTV on BlazeTV.com. I'm going to give you a specific example of how dishonest the media are, and of course, we turn to CNN. I have spent days, I have spent weeks, I've spent a month and a half explaining the National Emergencies Act of 1976, other related laws, discussing Article 2 of the Constitution, also Article 1 of the Constitution, at great length. And all you have to do is listen. It's on the internet. We have our programs on marklevinshow.com, our radio website, my podcasts. I mean, it's not like I'm hiding what I say. Anybody wants to listen to what I have said about the National Emergencies Act and its constitutionality in the situation where the president wants to use it, just listen to it. But what you're not free to do, CNN, is to cut and paste and cherry pick, to push a narrative. And the narrative that they pushed today was that me, a constitutional conservative, who is very consistent in his constitutionalism, broke down, buckled under, caved to Donald Trump, because now the Republican Party and conservatism is controlled by Trump. And you see, because of that, and we're all scared of him if we defy him, because of that, I've given my opinion as I have. And then they run an audio of me last night, which is taken completely out of context, because they don't play the whole thing. If they played the whole thing, they'd be playing it for 30 minutes. That's how much time I spent on it, give or take, in the first hour of last night's show. And you can add all the other hours I've spent discussing it, here as well as on radio. So there's no secret about my view. I don't take orders from anybody. I'm not caving or buckling to anybody. The chips will fall wherever they may. But the National Securities Act of 1976 is constitutional. Every president since 1976 has used it. The movement of funds by the President of the United States out of one account at the Defense Department into another account is authorized by congressional statute. So the president legally is following a congressional statute, and in terms of spending money, he's following another congressional statute. And in terms of the Constitution, the president is the executive branch under Article 2. Even if he didn't have statutory authority to move money around in cases of emergency, he could still do it. You know who did it? Abraham Lincoln did it. You know who else did it? Dwight Eisenhower did it. You know who else did it? Harry Truman did it. And other presidents did it before there was a National Emergencies Act of 1976. So why did Congress pass this National Emergencies Act of 1976? Because they wanted to unconstitutionally confer legislative power on the president? No, the opposite. They wanted to have some kind of codification of what a president could do under limited circumstances, under the Constitution, with authority from Congress in cases of emergency. And they built into this statute the power of Congress to reverse a president's decision if they could override a veto. And of course, there's judicial review. So how this is dictatorial or unconstitutional, I don't know. Now, somebody might say, well, Congress can't pass a statute that changes the Constitution. They didn't. They didn't pass a statute that changes the Constitution. And the president's not spending money that hasn't already been appropriated, first by the House, then by the Senate, then together in an appropriation bill. They've authorized him to do this. The problem is they don't like what he's doing. And I don't need constitutional lectures from Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski or Lamar Alexander or Mitt Romney, and I don't need them from Mike Lee, who's busy opening our prison gates and now wants family leave paid for out of Social Security. Tell me, Mike, which part of that is constitutional? Maybe you can point to a provision and explain it to me and the rest of the country. But that aside, back to CNN. We're going to play the full clip, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. What I just told you took what? 5 minutes. Less than 5 minutes. And it'll sound nothing like what I just said when they cut and paste my comments last night on the radio. Let's take a look. Go.
It's embarrassing for the president. It's the second time in 2 days. There was a Yemen resolution.
Now, first of all, this isn't about the president. I know they're obsessed with the president. This is about the American people and securing the southern border. This is about national sovereignty. This is about national security. They want to personalize it so they can continue to trash and tear down the President of the United States. And I might add that the Democrats and Republicans with whom the president is battling now have in the past voted to secure the border. They voted to authorize it. They voted to fund it. But because Trump is actually trying to take affirmative steps to secure that border for the American people, all of a sudden, they have amnesia. All of a sudden, it's amnesia. Like the National Emergencies Act of 1976. Nobody ever talked about that before. The over 50 times it was used by past presidents. Do you remember any one of these senators who've been there standing up saying, this is unconstitutional? Do you remember a vote in the Democrat House of Representatives when Obama was president? No, never. And this has nothing to do with what Obama did with his executive fiats out of the Oval Office. As an example, DACA, which we've talked about. DACA has no statutory legal basis, none whatsoever. There was no statutory funding mechanism to move money around for DACA, none whatsoever. The president did it on his own. There was no statutory or constitutional authority whatsoever. And what you will find is that CNN, other fake news outlets, as well as phony constitutionalists, phony originalists, phony conservatives, who are beating their chests and patting themselves on the head to convince you that they're purer than Trump, and they're purer than Mark Levin, and they're purer than these Republicans who are going to vote the right way, although some are not, that they know best when they don't know what the hell they're talking about. This has nothing to do with separation of powers, nothing. The president is applying existing law, whether it's the legal aspect or the funding aspect. The president's operating within his constitutional confines. As a matter of fact, this president has been more passive, more tame in following the Constitution than many of his predecessors. But you wouldn't believe it. But here's the point. We're going to continue with this clip. And now you're going to know why there's so many moronic zombies roaming the earth when they watch this clown and the clown sitting around this table. Go.
States out of any involvement with Saudi Arabia and other countries that have the civil war in Yemen. But this one's on his signature issue. Yeah. This is how the president won the Republican nomination. This is what he wants to go into the campaign. You heard him. It was not quite factual what the president said about not all constitutional scholars think he's on firm footing here. There's a debate about that, a legitimate debate about that. But the president wants to go into the campaign strong on immigration. I'm going to build my wall no matter what. And some people actually think the president will now campaign against not only the Democrats, but establishment Republicans, saying, look...
Oh, God forbid he campaigns against establishment Republicans who are sabotaging him. Oh, he can't do that. Only the Democrats can do that, you know. Go ahead.
I mean, that is the thing with this, that why this is such a rebuke, because one thing that President Trump has been able to do is keep his party in line. I mean, he has been able to get Republicans to at least be quiet, if not embrace things that they weren't embracing before, tariffs, things of that nature. And this is immigration.
Now, this is really foolish. There have been no tariff votes. The president has acted under the tariff statute of the 1930, whatever it is. To impose tariffs. So that has never really come before Congress. Go ahead.
So to get pushback on this and to have to veto, have your own party kind of vote down what you feel like is your signature?
I should remind this reporter for NPR and everybody, the vast majority of Republicans of the Senate are going to back the president. You have 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever it is, who are not. So the vast majority are. Go ahead.
Issue, that's a big deal. And one thing that President Trump has always had in his corner is that he is this fear that he could come out against a Republican if they voted against him, and that's kind of helped to keep them in line. But you're seeing that kind of break down. This is not a president who forgets. You know, he's still talking about John McCain's vote on health care years later. So the fact that they're willing to do this kind of speaks to his strength right now.
But the reason we all know if they voted their principle, the number would be a lot higher because they just think it's an over.
If you all voted your principal, the number would be higher, because he is a mental munchkin when it comes to the Constitution and understanding what's taking place. So in other words, you see, if you vote with the president, you're throwing the Constitution out of the window because you know this violates separation of powers. That's not correct. That's not correct. And we really don't need these former journalist students informing us about what the Constitution says and how it works. Go ahead.
Overreach by the executive branch.
Yeah, the reason they're doing this isn't because they want to vote against his signature issue. It's because in order to help him, they have to kill themselves. What's the point of being in the Senate if you have no powers as a senator?
No, but what is she rambling on about? You have no powers in the Senate? Have they read the National Emergencies Act of 1976? It doesn't authorize the president plenary power to do whatever the hell he wants. Congress wrote it. Do you think Congress would have written that? In 1976, when the Democrats had supermajorities in the House and the Senate, and you had a Republican president, do you think they would have written a statute that gives all their power to a president? Of course that would be unconstitutional. It would more than violate separation of powers. It would violate the core principles that undergird the Constitution of the United States. That's not what the National Emergencies Act does. It limits aspects of the authority of a president to use emergency powers. That's why they passed it. Go ahead.
And so beyond the constitutional question, it's like the actual real political question. I mean, every time that he asks them to do something to help him that involves giving away their own power, they're weakening their own leverage.
Nobody's giving away power. This statute is almost 50 years old. So Trump exercises it. It's been exercised over 50 times before. And all of a sudden, if you vote for Trump, that is, for what he's doing and against what Nancy Pelosi's doing, might as well give it up, because then you're giving all your power away. How stupid is that? Is that what happened? And the other 50 times the statute was used? Of course not. Who are these people? Why do they have why are they representing media outlets? Why are they on a media station, going on and on, rambling on like knuckleheads? Go ahead.
Negotiation or the next debate, and you know, and he says the numbers don't matter, but of course the numbers matter, because if it's 4 Republicans who do this, then they look like aberrations, and he can give them a nickname and maybe primary one of them. But if it's 4,
look how giddy she is. In fact, look how giddy all of them are. They just want him to fail. That's all. They want him to fail. Democrats have reversed course on their position on the border. They've reversed course on their position with illegal aliens. They just want him defeated. They want him to fail. They've been trying to push him out. This is the child abuse network, we must remember, with Nicholas Sandmann. They're not to be trusted. They're not to be believed. If you want news, you do not go to CNN. That much I can tell you. But I'm doing this for a reason. Go.
Or 12, or anywhere close to 20, it's a much bigger problem. What's he going to do, go after some of them or not others? There are going to be a couple of people on that list who the White House would love to have primaries against, and a couple that the White House can look the other way and say, what can we do? But, you know, a big number is much different.
To the point about how much the president has transformed the Republican Party. Some of it, maybe permanently, some of it just out of fear of crossing him, is out there. Remember, this is a little talk radio sample here. When President Obama used executive actions like this, he was the imperial president.
No, I never discussed President Obama using actions like this. Never discussed the National Emergencies Act until the last few months. Never, ever. What we discussed with Obama was his imperial actions, his actions by fiat, including DACA, which if you have an IQ above 12, you understand the difference between DACA and what the president is doing. But they don't allow any discussion, any rational discussion, anything. No. You've got to fit into their narrative. And you see the buffoons around the table, led by the chief buffoon right here, John King, the king of buffoons. Go ahead.
To destroy the Constitution. He was a horrible, horrible president. When Donald Trump does it, according to Mark Levin, it's great.
Some of these people dress up as constitutional conservatives, and some of them claim they're concerned about separation of powers.
He's trying to secure the border. If Congress won't go along, too damn bad. All roads don't go through Congress. Some do and some don't. Now stop. Now, I spoke last night, more than a half hour, maybe an hour off and on. and you see how they cut and paste? All the guts of what I said in the middle is missing. So if you have me saying, if Congress doesn't go along, too damn bad, and you have no other context, you must think I do believe in fascism. You must think I do reject the Constitution. But that's not what I said. That's certainly not in context. That's ridiculous. I've told you exactly what I think, which is exactly what I said last night and exactly what I've said on all the previous occasions. But they can't handle the truth. They can't handle the facts. Just another hit job. Oh, well, Levin, he must have just caved and folded because Trump has changed everything. Even conservatives, as strictly constitutionalists like Mark Levin. That's why I'm spending time on this, so you can see for yourselves how this works. Go ahead.
Today, when Mark Levin was concerned about that constitutional separation of powers, but I guess it was because there was a Democrat in the White House.
Shockingly enough, things
There's an intellectual consistency that gets dropped from a guy
Yeah,
who's...
there's an intellectual consistency that gets dropped. Is this news or is this stupid? Is this their narrative that they're pushing or is it news? Intellectual consistency. I am intellectually consistent on this issue, 100%. And I've explained it. And that's the problem. You can't actually take the time to explain what's taking place, to explain the law, to explain the Constitution, compare it to what Obama did. You don't have time on programs like this because they have their narrative, they have their agenda, and it's attack Trump, and attack anybody who may agree with Trump. And by the way, Trump didn't decide this on his own. He's got some of the smartest constitutionalists in the country sitting over there at the Justice Department in the Office of Legal Counsel, which William Rehnquist headed before he went to the Supreme Court, which Antonin Scalia headed before he went to the Supreme Court. He's got brilliant lawyers in the counsel's office. You think they're all just saying, yeah, blow off Congress, be a dictator, go ahead and do this? No, they're analyzing it, they're looking at it, they're giving the president their best legal advice. I'm analyzing it, I'm looking at it, and I am not one who's gone along with all the president's agenda. Have I? So it's really outrageous. But look, they're giddy, they're happy, they're excited. You have Republicans voting against the president. Please, please, please defeat the president. Don't secure the border. Let's all line up behind Pelosi and Schumer and Susan Collins and the rest. They are thrilled. And thrilled at what? That we, the American people, could get screwed? This is news? What is news? Who is this? I don't even know who this is. Go ahead.
Intellectually consistent.
Yeah, and it's not even just about your basic constitutionally prescribed powers. It's about how much money you want to spend and whether you really care about deficits. It's about whether you care about being able to subpoena members of the executive.
All right, stop. Stupid. The money's already appropriated. It's already appropriated. This has nothing to do with deficits. That battle was fought when Congress passed and the president signed the budget. So this specific, she's the Washington Compost right there. This has nothing to do with deficits. That money already exists. It's already in these buckets. And the president can move some of it around because Congress said he could, and the Article 2 allows him to do it to some degree. Go ahead.
To actually tell you what's going on when they're not actually, putting up information. That's that. If you feel like your guy is actually in charge and running the ship properly, you don't start that fight. But the issue right here is that the GOP has never been completely comfortable with the way Trump's running the ship, and you're seeing it come out in this, which, as much as it's his signature issue, a lot of the Republicans have not liked this wall or bust.
Let's take this.
You know what? Amazingly enough, that last line is correct. A lot of Republicans don't want that wall. The progressive movement didn't start in the Democrat Party. It started in the Republican Party. And the first progressive president was Theodore Roosevelt. And when he ran as a third-party candidate against Wilson and Taft, he ran what was nicknamed the Bull Moose Party, but the official name of the party was the Progressive Party. He was very much influenced by an intellectual progressive at the time, that is Theodore Roosevelt. He was enamored with a new publication called The New Republic, and he gave a really lousy speech about the Declaration of Independence, as all progressives do, basically rejecting what the founders had done and saying, if they could do that for their time, we can do something for our time. In other words, forget about them. We can do what they did for us. So we can redefine the principles of America.
And of course, this involves the centralization of government, because if you reject the Declaration and you reject the Constitution, what are you doing? Well, you're creating a country that's no different than most others. It's all about government, it's all about power, it's all about centralization. It's not about the individual, it's not about diversifying power, it's not about checks and balances. And that's the irony. This woman from the Washington Post, she doesn't believe in separation of powers and checks and balances and so forth and so on. The media generally was slobbering all over Obama, who trashed the Constitution left and right. If you're not free to make a distinction between one action and another, and they try to dismiss you or degrade you because you agree with the position the President of the United States is taking, not because he called you, he didn't. Not because you're caving to him, I didn't. Not because he might challenge you, he doesn't. But because you honestly believe the position he's taking is constitutional, what happens with the never-Trumpers, whether they're dressed up as liberals, whether they're dressed up as media types, or whatever they are, you're immediately called a sellout, that he's destroyed the Republican Party and destroyed the conservative movement, which they hate, by the way. They hate both. No, actually, Mitt Romney now is doing more to destroy the Republican Party and the conservative movement, and I don't need lectures from Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski on the Constitution, and I don't know where Mike Lee has gone with this stuff. Some of his positions are getting kookier and kookier as far as I'm concerned, and let me add that footnote. I'm a constitutionalist. I am a conservative. I have libertarian views in many areas. But libertarianism does not trump the Constitution. And this is the problem Rand Paul has and Mike Lee is increasingly having, as well as others. This is not about promoting libertarianism. It's about promoting constitutionalism. You want to change the Constitution? Then do it the old-fashioned way. You don't think it protects individual liberty enough? Then amend it. But don't tell me that the Constitution proscribes the president under Article 2 from securing the border and from complying with federal statutory law. And I don't remember Rand Paul or Mike Lee or Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski or any of the others raising concerns about the National Security Act of 1976 in all the years that they've been in the United States Senate. Do you? I don't remember them raising concerns about it when Obama used it, and others who were there when Clinton used it, when either the Bushes used it, or any other president since 1976. I don't remember that. Did we miss something? And I don't remember the media going on and on about Obama the dictator, and Clinton the dictator, and Bush the dictator, because they triggered the National Emergencies Act. And I don't remember back in 1976 when they passed this statute for the purpose of trying to codify what a president could do or couldn't do, conversely, with respect to emergencies. I don't remember all the talk about how they're handing dictatorial powers to the president, like this knucklehead at Bloomberg suggests, that Congress might as well leave. One other thing. In the House of Representatives, I could be off slightly, but it would be slightly. I believe there were only 14 Republicans who voted with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. That's not a lot. And a lot of the conservatives held their position because they understood that this is about constitutionalism, not liberalism and not libertarianism, and that the President of the United States is and has been following the Constitution. So I just wanted to point this out, how John King and his circle of knuckleheads there twisted what I said, cherry-picked what I said, edited what I said, because they're incapable of having an attention span beyond 14 seconds in order to try and push their narrative. There's no narrative to push here. What the president is doing, whether it's President Trump or some other president, is constitutional. Mitt Romney said today one of the things he's concerned about is the slippery slope. What slippery slope? Mitt Romney, we're already on a slippery slope. We're on Mount Everest, and we're sliding right off the edge. Our constitutional republic is in serious, serious danger. And there are many reasons, including the border and including gutless politicians like you. The Democrats will do whatever the Democrats do. They are unmoored from the Constitution. They want a wealth tax. That's unconstitutional. They want a 70 to 90% marginal tax rate. They go on about the new Green New Deal, which would destroy capitalism and destroy individual liberty in this country and create a massive centralized police state. They want open borders in defiance of the immigration law
They have sanctuary cities in nullifying federal immigration law. We can go on and on and on. We're already on a slippery slope, pal. I don't know where you've been, but that said, when Nancy Pelosi says, you know, a Democrat president can use this act to limit guns, you know, he or she could declare there's an emergency with gun violence. Now think to yourself, can they really? Is that what the law says? No, they can't. Why? Because we have a Second Amendment in the Constitution. You can't change the Second Amendment with a statute. You see the difference, ladies and gentlemen? The president's not changing the Constitution. The president's trying to secure the border. He's following the law. He's not changing the Constitution. He's not defying anything. Whereas if you try to use the National Emergencies Act to change the Second Amendment or press the First Amendment, that would be clearly unconstitutional. That's not what this statute does. And so, for some reason, relatively rational and reasonable human beings looking at this can't seem to make distinctions. But there are distinctions. That's what the law is all about. That's what adjudication is all about. And that's what rational thinking is all about. I'm mostly disappointed in so-called constitutionalists, originalists, and conservatives who are on TV and radio who are burping up the same talking points as John King and Mitt Romney. Well, they're dead wrong. They're dead wrong. So I wanted to address this. And CNN, John King, if you ever want to come here and get a constitutional lesson from me, I'd be more than happy to present it to you. That's it.
Want to see more? Sign up for LevinTV.